Lots of people build tribal commander decks, but not all tribes are as equal as others. So I want to take some time to highlight some of the lesser played tribes and why they struggle in commander and ways you could build them a little bit better. Now when I say tribal, I'm talking about decks that have a commander with the type all or most of the creatures in the deck also share. We're also generally looking to avoid running too many changelings, as that kinda defeats the purpose of a tribal deck. In this video today, we will be looking at the Skeleton Tribe, a long-time favourite for Halloween decks. But it's a tribe with an identity problem, and some serious problems when it comes to an actual build. But they've just got a new commander in Dominaria United, so we'll have a look at them and answer the question, is Tribal Skeletons playable? EDHREC tells us that Skeletons are the 59th most popular tribe, with 376 decks currently. Skeletons in Magic are generally low-cost creatures, primarily in black, with abilities around regeneration and recurring from the graveyard. Although nearly all skeletons are black, there are some examples of blue, green and red skeletons as well, but it's mostly black or hybrid with black colours. When we look at the commanders, we have quite a variety of choices now, with Skithiryx, the Blight Dragon, Tinybones, the Trinket Thief, Skeleton Ship, and the new Bladewing, Deathless Tyrant. We'll come back to the others shortly, as the new Bladewing in particular highlights one of the tribe's biggest problems, the identity problem it has with zombies. Now zombies are a well-known tribe, and are the second most played according to EDHREC, and at times they've even been the most played tribe. They have similar abilities to skeletons, with graveyard recursion themes and being mainly in black. Zombies, however, are a tribe with over 500 members and 44 different commanders. They give a range of colours, abilities and themes which you can build around. They also have many overlaps into the Skeleton tribe itself, with lords that buff both tribes, and skeletons that make zombie tokens. The similarities between these two tribes also means that every time a new graveyard undead is being made, it nearly always ends up being a zombie instead of a skeleton, which further increases the gap between them. Getting back to the commanders, we can see that Bladewing makes zombie tokens, not skeletons, which was most likely to reduce the amount of tokens that needed to be included in the commander deck that he comes in. However, this is a prime example of the zombie problem in action. Because so many other things already make zombie tokens, this potential new skeleton commander also ends up making zombies instead of skeletons. He is still a skeleton though, and provides black and red for his colours, so he isn't a bad choice for tribal skeletons. Especially when their other options also have problems. Skithiryx and Tinybones are both very powerful commanders, and that's why they're also a problem for tribal skeletons. You can't play a janky skeleton tribal deck with them. Skithiryx is the most well-known infect commander, and Tinybones is the discard commander, and both of these will get you hated off the table no matter how you try to justify that this isn't one of those decks. You might be able to get away with Tinybones in a play group of friends, but nobody's going to believe you if you just rock up to an LGS with them. So that leaves us with Skeleton Ship, which prior to Bladewing would have basically been our only real choice. And while Skeleton Ship is funny, it's also just a really bad creature. At 5 mana and with a fairly useless ability, you basically would only play it for access to blue in the deck. However, there are some potential non-skeletons worth mentioning, such as Meren or Old Stickfingers, which would give access to black and green. But we have enough decent choices that we don't really need to branch out into those. With green, we would have access to some really sweet cards though, like Skeletal Swarming and Golgari Grave Troll. But for this video, we're just not going to worry about Golgari skeletons that much. Lastly, we should mention Gut, True Soul Zealot, who can create skeletons with his ability. Now he obviously doesn't give you black himself, but he can take a background, so you can take one of the black ones to fill over that gap. Some decent background choices for Skeleton Tribal might be Agent of the Iron Throne, Criminal Past, or even Haunted One if you can use some cards that can change creature types around. So since our mono-black commanders aren't really suitable, that leaves us with either red-black skeletons under Bladewing or Gut, or blue-black skeletons under Skeleton Ship. Either way, the decks will look pretty similar due to the creatures available. So let's dive into the creatures we have in those colours. We have 47 black skeletons with an extra 4 if blue is included, and 5 if red is included. Either way, the core of our deck is going to be creatures that can recur themselves from the graveyard over and over. So decks built around sacrifice and graveyard recursion would make the most sense. Most skeletons are also on the lower end of the mana curve, with lots of 1, 2 and 3 mana skeletons. Outside of the ones that just regenerate and recur themselves, there are also some with some cool abilities, like Carrionet, which acts as removal, Dimir Houseguard, which has a tutor with its transmute ability, and Clattering Augur that can draw a card. But we also have a decent selection of top-end skeletons as well, with creatures like Bone Dragon, Skithiryx from earlier, and Ghastly Death Tyrant. Bladewing himself is also quite a powerhouse, and could probably hold up the top end of a deck all by himself. The additions of blue or red don't add a whole lot to the mix, as most of these skeletons are similar to the ones we already have in Mono Black. Some notable ones, however, are Demi-Lich, which lets you cast instants and sorceries from the graveyard, Cathari Remnant, that gives Cascade, and Carnage Gladiator, that makes blocking harder. So how do we actually build skeletons? Well, sacrificing aristocrats is the most straightforward answer. Our creatures are cheap and can come back over and over, so abilities that require us to sacrifice a creature are going to be fairly easy to satisfy. We also have a lot of regenerate in the tribe, so we'd be able to abuse board wipe effects, like Blasphemous Act and Crux of Fate, to keep our stuff around while destroying everything else. There are a lot of sacrifice outlets in Black that we'd be able to abuse, such as Black Market and Ashnod's Altar to help make mana, Dark Prophecy and Liliana to draw cards, and Bastion of Remembrance and Goblin Bombardment to deal damage. The design of the deck might be a bit slower than a normal Aristocrats build, since we aren't abusing tokens and we lose access to some of the creature effects it normally works with, such as Blood Artist and Zulaport Cutthroat. I wouldn't go for a self-reanimator build with this deck, just because we don't have that many super strong targets to cheat into play. However, mass tribal reanimation is available, with effects like Haunting Voyage and Patriarch's Bidding being really good includes in any tribal deck that can run them. You could also run some of the reanimation that targets any graveyard for some extra flavour in the deck, but it's not really the theme of the tribe, so that would be up to you. There are a couple of other skeleton cards that are worth considering. Death Baron is a skeleton lord for our creatures, giving +1/+1 and Death Touch, even though he is a zombie himself. And Death Priest of Makruel also buffs our skeletons, and can create them with their second ability. Lastly, Spawning Pool is worth running just for the theme, since it can become a skeleton creature at only the cost of coming in tapped. Since no matter what we do, we can't escape the zombies when building a deck like this, we can at least help the situation. Black gives us access to Conspiracy, along with the colourless mask with Nexus, to help fix our tokens. Suddenly Bladewing can make mass skeleton tokens, and Gut also can count as a token. While we don't want to build the deck around them assuming we'll get these cards into play, they are pretty good for both Rakdos commanders when building Tribal. As skeletons are low costed and we want to be playing a lot of them, we'd also be able to dig into the cards that care about creature type. Path of Ancestry, Herald's Horn, Vanquisher's Banner, and Door of Destinies, to name a few. Ways to pump up our skeletons and reward us for running a high density in the deck. With access to blue, we could also use cards like Arcane Adaption and Kindred Discovery to draw more cards, or with red we get Shared Animosity and Molten Echoes. Black also gives us Pact of the Serpent and Kindred Dominance as further payoffs of building Tribal. With a good spread of creatures for the tribe, even if some of them are a bit boring in one note, it does open up some powerful effects for these colours. There are also a lot of cards in Magic that have either skeletons or bones in the art, and if you wanted to go really hard on the tribe and theme, it's possible to put together a really cool looking deck. Read the Bones, Skeletal Scrying, Bone Shards, Ward of Bones, and Skeleton Key, for example. It might cause you to run some suboptimal cards, but we're already in Skeleton Tribal, so that shouldn't worry you too much. So what's the verdict for this tribe? Well, it's looking much better now than it did a year ago. Gut and Bladewing give us some solid Rakdos choices for a commander, giving access to red effects into the deck, and also some powerful abilities to build our skeletons around. Both make tokens with their abilities, which feeds into the sacrifice theme that the tribe seems to want to do. Sadly, our old skeleton ship just doesn't stack up like it used to. It still provides access to blue if you wanted to do a more graveyard-centric build with self-mill, however its abilities just don't match up as well against the new commanders. The creature base is a bit plain, lots of regenerate and graveyard recursion, but it has a good spread over the mana curve and a handful of strong creatures at the top end. We aren't going to have the same quality per creature as something like a zombie deck, but we will be really hard to deal with as our skeletons come back over and over and over. I do think these decks need to go pretty hard on mana, mainly so you can afford to hold up extra mana to regenerate your skeletons, and to pay for the abilities to recur them. Some of them aren't very cheap, unfortunately. But once you've established a board presence, it's going to be really hard for the table to remove you. Is this tribe going to work in a high-powered meta? I don't think so. But for a mid-tier game, it absolutely will. The commanders have taken this tribe to a new height, and I would judge Skeleton Tribal to be quite decent now. In my opinion, Bladewing is going to be the best choice for Skeleton Tribal right now, as he provides the creature type and a potential powerful top end for the deck. However, Gut and Skeleton Ship are still going to be fine choices, though it might take a bit more work to get them up to the same power. Wizards has clearly been thinking about this tribe over the last few years with these new commanders, and if they continue down this route, we should see some more support in the coming sets. It would be great to see a 3-colour skeleton commander, perhaps including green to give access to those cards, along with more skeleton tribal lords to help buff up our weaker skeletons. but the future seems helpful for the tribe. Halloween is next month, so I can't think of a better time to actually try out a skeleton deck. So, apparently something went right in the YouTube algorithm with the worm video. Thanks to everyone who's shown up since it got released. My initial plan for these was to do 4 videos on some tribes I've tried to build in the past, so feel free to drop a comment about tribes you'd like, and I might be doing some more of these in the future. That's it for now though, so thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again next time.